Welcome everybody to the workshop today. Thank you all for coming along. Let me know down below in the chats if you can see and you can hear me okay. I can see a lot of you already down below in the chats. Thank you all for coming along, and there's quite a large range of people from all over the states, a few from Australia. But yeah, drop a message in the chats and let me know where you're watching from and maybe something that you're working on at the moment with watercolors, whether it might be your watercolor techniques, layering, could be something like a particular subject that you're working on as well. I'd love to hear from you. For those of you who are new to these live workshops, my name is Darren Yeo, and I'm a watercolor artist over in Melbourne, Australia. And basically, I run these live workshops. This one's a special one because I actually have been advertising and sharing this around a little bit so I can yeah, just run a more, I guess, beginner friendly workshop. And today we're going to be painting a beach landscape. And before we do, I'm actually going to go through some basic watercolor techniques. And there's only two watercolor techniques that I think are going to be really important for you. For me anyway, when I started as a beginner, as long as you know these two watercolor techniques, you can pretty much paint anything. So before I get started, I thought I'd show you some of my work. Now I paint in a very loose style, okay, which means most of my paintings normally take about less than an hour, about an hour max. And I really like to get in this sort of impression of a scene. I don't like to spend too long fiddling around with all little details, though at the same time, details are important. But yeah, here's one that I did the other day. I'll just go through some of these, but I'd love to hear from you. Just drop a message down in the chat. There's quite a few of you guys watching. Got Anne from Sydney. We've got Bonnie from Canada. New beginner at age 70. Look, it's never too late to start. And truth be told, I only started painting something like, started again painting about 7 or 8 years ago. So yeah, it's never too late to start. And I tell you what, you'd be surprised at how much progress you can make in a short period of time as long as you keep consistent with your practice. So yeah, let me know also how the video and the audio is appearing. I hope it's looking all right for everyone. Sometimes I do get a little I do drop out sometimes during the live, so if I disappear for a moment, just hang around and I will get back to the stream. Okay, it's just that, yeah, sometimes there are some technical difficulties. Fingers crossed there's nothing today, but yeah, this is a little boat scene that I did a while back. Only took me about 30 minutes to do. A combination of wet and wet, wet and dry techniques. Okay, some more sort of wet and wet techniques. Quite a few different things in here, different subjects. As you can see, I paint with a loose kind of style. I always think to myself, how can I paint with as few brushstrokes as possible? How can I simplify things? Because I think one of the biggest mistakes beginners make is you just try to focus on all the little details and get bogged down in everything, and it can become quite stressful and end up with a very overworked painting. And I think watercolors are more suited to it, spontaneous freshness. But when people say, just paint loose, it's not always just with the sense of abandon. You also have to understand the techniques and understand the process of how to paint so that you have the confidence to be able to paint loose. So it's not just as simple as just going in and just throwing in some paint and hoping for the best. So I'm going to show you today the different techniques that I use and the process that I use in order to paint loosely, paint quickly, and end up with a nice, beautiful landscape that you can show off. Well, not show off, I guess, show your friends and family and also be happy with at the end of the day, because I know a lot of us, when we get to the end of our painting, when I started off anyway, it was always, didn't really meet up to my expectations. So you often have that vision of what you want to paint, but it just doesn't look like what you end up with it right at the end. So look, I've got so many of these. I could keep going for, the next 30 minutes talking about that, but I know you guys are here obviously to watch me paint and to show you how to paint this nice little beach scene. But yeah, I just wanted to show you a few little paintings just to give you an idea of my style. Okay, and I do use this same process for all of my paintings. So if you, yeah, as long as you follow along and listen and apply what I'll teach you today, the same process can be applied to anything. Okay, anyway, I might put all this stuff away. Got a bit got a bit excited there. And I want to run through a little exercise with everyone before we get started, okay? Now, you should have, I sent out a whole bunch of emails, sent out probably too many emails, so sorry if I bug some of you, but there was an email on materials, what paper to use, the references, all that kind of stuff. I've just got a bit of paper here. Now, this is some sketch paper. Did a quick little sketch of the scene before, and this is something that I really encourage you guys to do, even if you've got some spare paper around. It doesn't have to be, even watercolor paper. It just gets you used to drawing and composing the scene, and that way once you actually get into the painting, it feels less intimidating, okay? But 2 techniques I want to show you, okay? 2 techniques. So the first one is wet in dry. Now, excuse my handwriting. I've got shocking handwriting. I barely actually write in pencil or pen. As you know, these days, everyone's just sort of typing away on the computer. And the bottom one here, which I'll show you in a moment, is wet in wet. Oops. Shocking handwriting. All right. So, wet and dry. I've already put a bit of paint here on the page. Now, this here is basically completely dry, okay? Now, wet on dry, as the name implies, is you're painting onto dry paper using, of course, wet paint. So this is already dried. Now, this could be like a Skywash that I put in there, just a basic Skywash or background wash. Also, you can just leave the paper completely dry like that, okay? So this could be the Skywash. Now, if you go in and pick up a bit of darker paint, it can be anything, okay? I'm just picking up a bit of brown, okay? Now, for this workshop, I did mention that you only need 3 colors, and that is basically your primary colors: red, yellow, and blue. So if you've got those 3 colors, you can get by with this workshop, okay? But I'm mixing up a bit of gray. Now, gray is just a mixture of your 3 primaries, whatever it is, okay? Of course, I've got a pre-mixed gray, which is called neutral tint. And when you go over the top of the paper, when it's already dry, notice what happens. You get sharp lines, sharp edges. So when you're using wet on dry techniques, you're always thinking to yourself, well, in this particular case, I want to paint something that doesn't move around, that's static, so it doesn't have soft edges. So we're thinking about things like clouds, we're thinking about distant mountains. We're going to paint those wet and wet because the edges are soft. Now, if the edges are sharp like this, like trees, for example, maybe some closer mountain ranges, or maybe this headland or whatever out in the back, okay, we want that to be, a little bit more sharper against the background. That's when you'd use wet on dry. Same thing goes if you want to put in some people, some figures or something like that. People in the foreground, like this. I'm just going to place in a quick person, someone just walking into the scene like that, okay? Notice how they look a bit sharper, these 2 people that I'm quickly painting in like that, okay? Because you really want these details to stick out, to pop out, okay? Really, really quick demonstration of wet and dry. I've got Yvette here. Yvette, Paul, good to see you. I think this is going to be one of your favorites. Again, Yvette, you love your beach scenes. So I thought I'd do another one of these. I think a lot of people like these as well. Pamela, good morning, Pamela. A couple of my students here in the chats. I've got Galen Brown, quite a few people here as well. Also, Kate Parbury in Hong Kong. Hope you're enjoying your holiday over there. And Charlotte Wenger from Minnesota. Lots of people. Awesome. So, yeah, little demonstration on wet and dry. Here's another one here. So, I'll do a really quick little, maybe some distant mountains. Okay. And I'll put a bit of blue in there. Often with distant mountains, you will get a bluish tinge that appears. Okay. Some distant sort of mountains like that. Okay. So pretty sort of basic. Okay, nothing, nothing too complicated there. So the main thing to understand is if the paper is dry, or if the previous paint that you've put in there essentially is dry. When you go over the top with some wet paint, it's going to appear sharper. The paint is not going to spread out everywhere, okay? And the same thing goes here, you know. I'm just putting in some wet paint, and see the edges of this box that I'm painting is sharp. You've got these sharp edges, okay? Now let me show you something else. This is very important, and this is called wet and wet painting, something that beginners, I think, shy away a lot from, and certainly scared me a lot in the beginning because it is difficult to control, but once you get it right, you can get in some absolutely beautiful shapes and create this, I guess, that trademark watercolor look, you know, where it almost looks like the paint's just landed in the right spots and blends nicely together. So at the moment, the paper here is wet. See, I've added in some kind of blue paint here. Now, say if I pick up some darker paint, okay? Now, remember, this paint here is about 10%, 5 to 10% paint, and the rest of it water. So the majority of this is water, okay? We use a lot of water. Now we're going to add some paint over the top of this while it's still wet. So I'm going to get some purple maybe here. Let's get in some purple. And the important thing to note here, when you're adding in additional paint over the top, we want to make that paint a little bit thicker. So we want to use a higher concentration of paint to water. Okay. And the reason why we're doing that is if we put too much water back into this whole area, it is going to cause a bloom and it's going to look funny. We don't want that. So these are just some kind of impressionistic looking clouds that I've painted, just dropped in here. And notice the difference between that and that. The edges kind of feather out. They become soft. Okay? So when you're painting anything, always think about these two techniques, wet and dry. Okay, if you're painting something that really needs to stick out. So if we look at the reference photo for today, if we look at that headland out the back, you know, let me know in the comments below. Would we paint that headland in the back wet and wet or wet and dry? Noting that it has a sharp sort of edge in the background. Okay, so the edge is that dark edge there against the sky. Would we paint that in wet and wet or wet or dry? Okay, and same goes for maybe the water down the front. You see how the water just kind of blends in a little bit with the sand, you know? Would we paint that in wet and wet or wet and dry? Okay, because I'll tell you the answer, but yeah, drop a comment down below if you want to have a guess. The headland out the back, essentially, wet on dry, and here in the foreground for the reference photo with all the, you know, the sand blending into the water a little bit, and even the reflection, we can get in with a lot of wet in wet painting. This is a quick little sketch, but I will put in a bit more detail in the actual painting. Okay, so this is a little, I guess, a little tip that I think just always keep this in mind, and you can never go wrong. Okay, because I think a big complaint and thing that I get from people is that when they start painting, it's this sense of you know, not being able to control your paints, you know, putting some paint in and it just spreads all over the place and it looks like nothing that you're trying to paint. And that's often because you're using the wrong technique for that particular thing that you're painting, okay? And also keep in mind, with wet in wet painting, the longer you let the paint dry, so if I sit here, I paint this little section here, for example, and I sit here for another, I don't know, 1 to 2 minutes. And then I start putting in some of these other colors. What do you think is going to happen? Well, because this area is already starting to dry, what's going to happen is that you're still going to get a bit of this spreading around, so these softer edges, but they're not going to be as dispersed. So the paint won't disperse as much, which means you're going to get an effect in the middle of this. Okay, you're still going to get sort of sharper, a slight sharpness to everything. I don't know where to do it. Maybe here. Yeah. This paper dries really quickly, so it's probably easier to demonstrate this technique. Even the bottom here, you see that's dried. Okay. So I'm just painting in some lines like this. And yeah, because the bottom is slightly dried, you can see what I'm talking about. you get a bit of spreading around, but not to the extent of this. So you're kind of trying to match, depending on how blurry the subject is, or how much blending there is in the reference photo for a particular area, between water, between the people, that kind of thing. You're trying to match this kind of technique, anything in the middle. Okay, so wet and dry, wet and wet, or different stages of wet in wet. And yeah, fantastic. So we're going to go ahead and get started now. I just wanted to go through this little technique, and for you to try along as well. Okay, some of you might already have finished drawing the reference photo. Okay, if you haven't finished drawing it, just I'll go through the drawing as well, so we can do this all together. But if you're already finished with the drawing, you can practice these techniques. Okay, practice these techniques, or even if you finish the drawing faster than I do today. Okay, because this is where you get a bit of your brush mileage. This is where you get your confidence. I practice these techniques all the time, and I end up with sketchbooks just filled with all this rubbish. It doesn't even make sense. A lot of it's just abstract stuff. But when you actually have to go in with your proper painting, you feel a lot more confident because you've done this hundreds of times. Okay, so I hope that was helpful. Let me know if you have any questions as well during the show today. In the chats, I do check the chats, and I will get back to you. Okay, so just give me 1 second. Oh, that's all good. So I just wanted to check everything was running all right. So I'm painting today on a piece of A5 paper. So guys in America believe that is, here's my ruler. I think it's about 11 to 14 inches, I believe. About 11 to 14 inches. Let's see. So I know this, for some of you, you really want to make sure. Yeah, so about, oh, no, it's not. It's 11 to 7.5 inches. Okay. So relatively small, but when you start off painting, I find that if you paint on a smaller bit of paper, it is less intimidating. Large bits of paper tend to definitely scare people, and yeah, usually is suited for more complex subjects. For a simpler subject like this, we don't need a huge bit of paper. Okay, but I might add in a few little surprises near the end, a few little, maybe like some birds or something in the background, maybe another figure walking around. And that's kind of like a bonus, because sometimes I just like to change the reference photo around. In fact, I do that most of the time. But we will go through and paint this in. So let's go ahead and get started. Okay. Now, guys, let me know if everything, if you can see and hear. Okay. Good. I'm just gonna. Sorry, just give me 1 moment. Just wanted to pause part of that video. Okay, so let's get cracking. Now, in the background, we're going to put in the horizon line. So basically, where the sky meets the water. So looking at that reference photo, and you can see it in the top right-hand corner of the screen, or I did send it out before this workshop. If we divide the paper into half, so we can definitely find the middle part of the paper, which is about here, right? Now we want to see, where is the horizon line? So where does the water actually meet the sky? It's definitely not in the middle. It's a little bit below the middle. I wouldn't say, it's not, almost like a third of the way up from the bottom of the page, plus a bit. So we just want to draw a line around about there, okay? Just underneath that center part of the scene, all right? And this is really important. You have to get this one quite accurate, because this is going to form the basis of everything else in your painting. Okay, so the landmarks, for example, we've got this bit of headland coming in, okay, from the left-hand side. Check that out. All right, so it's kind of got two bits. There's one bit that's in the background, the darker bit, and then in the midground, we've got this kind of lighter bit of rock or whatever. So I'm just really being quite loose here, just cutting around and doing these little rock shapes, okay? Be very loose with this. And the great thing about nature, guys, is that nature comes in all different shapes and sizes. Rocks, especially even trees. So you don't have to get it perfect. All right. Now remember this last little rock area here, they end up just past the middle point. So you don't want to go too far to the right, because I'm hoping maybe we could put in some, I don't know, maybe we could put in some boats or something out here in the distance. I don't know. Let's put in a boat. I'm just putting a sort of rectangular type shape. This could be a yacht, or something like that. All the way in the distance, small kind of something, You don't have to do this. It's just something I decided to do. And over to the right as well, I thought I'd put in a little bit more land, maybe an indication of some additional land running out the back. Maybe this could be like a cove or something like that. Okay. Now here in the foreground, there's really not a whole lot to draw. We've firstly got these two people, and we'll get them in just a moment. But for your sake, as you guys are beginners, I want you to draw a very, very light line here in the foreground where we can see this area of the water mixing in with the sand. Okay, so you've got this kind of reflection of the sky or whatever, because there's obviously the water just sort of meets with the sand. Just a little bit of that there. Okay, sort of where the water starts, very, very lightly. Okay, and I ask you to put that in as a, to start off with, because that's just going to guide you later on when you're trying to mix the water and the sand, just knowing where the two combine together. Okay, so let's put in the people. Now the people, there's only two people here, but notice where the heads are. The heads are just on the horizon line. So you know where we've drawn that line in, right at the back there. Okay, where the sky meets the water. I'm going to now put in the head just below there. It's actually just below there, in the rectangular light shape. I mean, it looked like a couple of guys, a couple of friends just walking around on the beach. And rectangles for the heads, and the bodies I'm going to put in kind of like this squarish type shape like that. Okay, there's a couple of arms running down the side. It's not a huge deal. As long as you get the general shape of the bodies, you should be completely fine. I've decided also maybe to put the figures a little bit closer to the front of the scene as well. Okay, let me put the legs in like this. A couple of legs like that. Simple looking little figures like this, and I might actually have to lower this water down a little bit below, tiny bit, so I can get maybe a little indication of some reflection of the legs there in the water. But I have brought them a little bit further closer. Okay, now this is something I always do, but you don't have to do this. I thought I might add another person here, maybe just walking around in the foreground of the scene a little bit closer. Okay, maybe a little bit, little teeny bit closer like this. Okay, don't have to do this. This is just a another addition that I like to add in at times. Okay, I find that having sometimes a third figure, especially having an odd number of subjects, does help to create a bit more interest, a bit more balance, because there's a lot of, obviously there's people there on the right hand side, so a little bit more balance here. Okay, so someone maybe walking there to the left. Okay, a little bit larger, but yeah, similar size, I guess, to the ones to the right. Okay, and that's pretty much it. That's all you need to do for the drawing. Okay, how are we all doing? Let me know in the chats if you have any questions at the moment. Yeah, let me know how you've been going so far. By now you should have a similar looking drawing to what I have here. Okay. Now I am gonna go and pick up a bit of paint, but I'll let you know the next steps that we'll go through first, because I know some of you are probably still drawing, and yeah, still drawing. So yeah, basically the next step that we're going to do now is we're going to paint in all the light colors. Okay, so talking about light colors, I'm talking about the sand. I'm talking about the sky. Um, Now, the waves, there are some white areas of the waves out the back. And for those of you who don't have any gouache, any white gouache, because I didn't ask specifically for you guys to have any white gouache. If you have some, it's good. White gouache is basically an opaque watercolor paint, so you can go over the top with a bit of white afterwards. I'm probably going to do that for some sections to add in a bit of detail, but I'm going to show you how you can actually get in some indications of those waves. Okay, and that's just by leaving out the white of the paper. So we're leaving that out. We're also painting in a very light wash of the sky. We're going to paint in a bit of the lighter areas of the water down below, maybe in a greenish blue. And then down the bottom, we're going to blend that in with the yellow. Okay, so let's get cracking. I'm going to get started. So now the Skywash, I'm going to pick up some blue, cerulean blue, okay? The one thing I don't really like about this reference photo is that I feel there should be a bit more blue in the sky. So I'm going to just dull down the cerulean a bit. I've got some gray, and you might be asking, how do you get gray? Well, if you mix your three primaries together, you're going to get that very easily. So basically, if you've got your blue, red, yellow, mix those together. Okay, a bit of grey and a bit of blue, because I just want to dull down this area of the sky a bit. Now I'm using a mop brush, and this was something that I mentioned is important for you guys as well. If you have a larger brush or a mop brush like this, super important, because it helps you to paint a large area without much fuss. Okay, so you don't have to keep on going back to the paper. Okay, so there we have it. This is just a Skywash. Very, very light Skywash. And it's just to get rid of the white of the paper, right? And up the top of the scene, let me just darken a little bit. I'm going to add a little bit of blue. Tiny bit of ultramarine blue or something like that. Just up the top to darken the top of the sky. And I often do this because when we're thinking about perspective, it's usually the top of a scene is the darkest part of the sky anyway, and the bottom part is a little bit darker. So in this particular section, I'm going to show you something. Now you can see in the reference photo, you can leave it like this if you want. Looks perfect. But we can also add in some little clouds, kind of like what I was telling you before with those wet in wet techniques. Because the page is still wet, so I can go ahead and pick myself up a bit of color off the page. You know, let's pick up a bit of gray, and I'll put in a bit of purple in there. Now, remember when you do this, the paint has to be a little bit more thick, so you have to have a bit more paint in here. Okay, so you basically want to just drop in this section some little indications of clouds. Okay, if you want to, you don't have to do this. I'm just going to do this to show you how simple it is to create some little clouds running through the back. Okay, dry off the brush a little bit. There's a little cloud. The clouds up the top are often a bit larger as well. So just scumble the brush around. There we go. We've got a bit of a darker cloud up the top. We can do it down the bottom with some smaller clouds like this. Okay. You don't have to do this, but I'm just showing you how to do it, and it only takes a few seconds, and I think it just adds a bit more interest to the sky. Okay, I can go a bit darker. When this dries off, it will barely kind of be noticeable. Okay, but yeah, something like that. You don't have to do it, but this is I guess it's a little demonstration of wet watercolor technique. Okay, probably got a bit overboard with those clouds there, but you know what? No worries. Okay, this will all blend in nicely. Now, for the distant mountains here, not mountains, they're not really mountains, are they? They're just kind of like, it's a headland area. Kind of like what I was saying before, we are going to paint in some sharper edges in some parts, and I'm hoping this is dried. You want to wait for this to dry off, this little edge to dry off a little bit, okay? And also wait for this little edge to dry off a bit, because from this point onwards, we're going to be painting wet on dry, okay? As well as a bit of combination of wet and wet into this section. So probably the easiest thing to do first, I think anyway, is let's get in a bit of yellowish color into these rocks. Okay, this area is probably drying a touch. And I think we have a question here. And Francis, also one of my students, asking, did you scumble the brush around or clouds? Is that a watercolor term? So I said a scumble. So scumbling is basically, it's a technique where you move the brush around in kind of erratic areas to create a loose kind of shape, a loose shape. So I find sometimes the more I try to make an area look like a cloud, the less it looks like a cloud. So I use that scumbling technique to paint in those clouds, and so I hope that helped. Righto. So let's just fix this bit up a little bit. So let's put in a bit of yellow through here. This is just a bit of yellow ochre. Okay, drop that in. And I'm doing this because you can see the light is kind of coming in a bit from the left, but it's an overcast day, so you don't really get to see too much light at all. But there is a tiny bit of that yellowish color on the rocks anyway. And in the background, you can see not only that, there is some kind of like yellowy shapes and some kind of warmer shapes in the background of that rock. So I like to always put in a little bit of lighter color in those rocks to help make it look a bit more interesting, because you're going to go over the top of this anyway. So a lot of this yellow is not going to be seen, but you're also going to leave out some of this yellow in a moment too, so just to allow it to sort of show through. Okay, a bit more there, a bit more there on the right hand side of that rock. Okay, so while that is all happening, I'm going to start painting in a bit of the headland and stuff, probably out the back. Has this dried yet? Not completely, not completely. You probably want to wait till this to dry a little bit. I usually use a hair dryer, so I'll grab a hair dryer just to speed up this process. There. Okay. Now, let's go ahead and I'm going to pick up that same round brush, there we go, mop brush, and I'm going to mix in a color here. Now I do have some brown, but if you don't have brown, just use a kind of grayish color, okay, with a bit more yellow in there. Okay, and remember your grays are just a mixture of your primary colors, red, blue, yellow. Okay, and I'm just painting in this shape in the background in a darker sort of color. Okay, remember this is kind of like the darkest section of the painting. Okay, like this. And because that area in the back is predominantly dry, you're going to see sort of a sharper edge. I mean, this part has not completely dried up the top. That not a big deal, but I'm going to cut around these little bits of parts there, back into here again. We've got more, kind of darker areas in here as well. So you've got this whole shape is pretty dark. Okay, so if you accidentally miss out on some of these lighter sections in here that I'm cutting around, don't worry at all. Don't worry yourself about that. All the little yellows and bits in there it's just a bonus. Think of it that way. Okay, more here, where it just goes into the water. Here at the back as well, there's some distant kind of, I don't know what they are, some distant sort of headland that I've invented. Okay, I'm going to paint this in with a little bit of a bluish color, just a subdued blue. Okay, and because the edges there are still kind of wet, the sky is still wet. Look what's happening. It goes into the sky, right, and it blends, right. And I'm doing this so that with these boats down below that I've painted in before, the boats are going to kind of pop out a little bit more, because I was worried that they're not, because the sky is very light, I won't be able to see the boats. So a little bit of darkness behind there does the trick. Okay, a bit more blue, tiny bit more ultramarine blue out the back. Okay, so we've got some sharper sort of shapes here for the ones in the foreground. We've got some softer ones here. Again, a bit of that practice with wet on dry and wet on wet. Going back into this section, let's finish this up. Now we've got this part of the rock, still pretty dark. I'm going to put in some, yeah, you can use even some greenish colors in here as well. Sometimes, as you know, with the headland areas, there's moss and stuff all kind of growing. But try to leave out, like what I'm doing, a little bit of that yellow, a tiny bit of that yellow. This is going to make it look more interesting. And, and I'm also doing that scumbling technique a little bit here as well. Okay, that is another way that you can paint loosely. You just think of the shape and paint that shape in with as few brush strokes as possible. You'll notice that there are parts of the rock that are darker. And this is why I'm adding in a little bit more darker paint in some areas. And this is all wet in wet as well. Wet in wet. So that way, these darker shapes that I'm adding in don't look too over the top and sharp. Okay, so we want a combination of sharp and soft shapes in here. But definitely this background shape there is a bit darker. So this background bit of headland. So I'm implying that. Okay. You only want to do this once. Paint that area in once while it's still wet, and then continue on. Okay. Don't spend too much time in there. Righto, so let's continue on to the next part of the scene, and we're going to paint in some water. So just below here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick up some blue. Now, what you can do is you can mix that blue, a bit of blue, with some, what am I trying to say? A bit of blue with some green. And when you do that, you're going to get this similar sort of color as you see here. It's almost like a light green, very dull green color. Okay, so we match that a bit, but if you don't match it, it's not a big deal. In fact, if the color of the water should be a little similar to the sky, actually. Okay, so I want to make it a bit of like a dullish blue, but still have a little color in there. Okay, so I'm going to, a bit too much gray, kind of like grayish blue-green color that I'm mixing up. Very light, but still a bit darker than the Skywash. Okay, a bit darker than the Skywash. So let's go in here, and this is important for you guys as well. You want to leave out some of these white areas of the painting. Can you see there's just little bits of white this is going to indicate like the waves that are crashing against the rock out in the back. Okay, in some areas anyway. So let's have a look. I'll leave that bit of white there. I'll leave a bit of that white there. And like I said, if you have some gouache, it's going to make it a lot easier for you afterwards. But you're kind of just leaving out some white in areas. Cut around those figures as well. There's people out the front. Okay. But yeah, as you can see here, there's little bits of white for the waves. Okay. Coming down further into the foreground. Here we go. We're cutting around those figures a bit more. Okay. And sometimes I like to just let that brush skip over the paper like that as well. So you get some little bits of the paper showing through. Okay, this water to the left. Let's do this in a few brush strokes. 1, 2. Just again, I'm leaving in a bit of that, the white of the paper, but not overthinking it. Okay. This comes all the way down into the sand here. All the way down into the sand, right to the front of the scene there. Okay. Very light wash. Most of this is just water. Now, I'll bring this down a bit further here, actually, so that these figures look like they've got a bit of water around their feet, maybe. Okay. Now, what I will do is add in the yellow. Because why am I doing this? Because all this area is still wet. So we want to do this right now. Let's drop in a bit of yellow. I might dull down that yellow with a touch of grey as well. Just a little bit of grey in that yellow to just desaturate that colour a bit. You can also, funny enough, mix purple in with it, and it actually creates the same effect. You mix two complementary colours together, it just ends up dulling down that initial colour. Bonus tip. So here we have it. I'm just mixing in this yellow quickly while the paper is still wet. Okay, down below. Okay, more yellow. These large mop brushes make it so much easier. Okay, so now we've got this section of the water mixed into the sand, which is exactly what we want. Okay, a nice soft transition between the water and the sand. And here's a little thing, a little bonus technique I'm going to show you. Again, while this page is still wet, I like to pick up a bit of additional paint, maybe some, I don't know, some darker paint that I've got here in the palette, whatever it is. Just flick in some of this paint with the brush. Okay, I'm wearing a half decent shirt at the moment, so be careful if you're wearing a white shirt. Be careful with this, because I'll tell you what, I've stained a lot of my white shirts with using this technique, and I don't like using it much. But I'm going to show you in this one. So you just flick the paint in. It's a very subtle technique, but you end up with some interesting textures here. Okay, look at me. I've gone so overboard. I flicked some of that paint into the sky. So yeah, be careful with that. But I'm going to fix that up later. We're going to turn them into birds. Yeah. Something you always have to remember, guys, is with watercolors, nothing ever goes to plan. Nothing ever goes to plan. Every single painting I've done, something has, you can't control everything. And learning to work with your mistakes, accepting your mistakes, and either changing them into something or leaving them as is really important. Because I used to start off painting and I'd rip up the page and I think I've stuffed it, got halfway through, it doesn't look like anything, I've stuffed it. This person, I've painted the leg too dark, or a shape, a different shape, I've stuffed it. You just have to see it through to the end. Okay, you'd be surprised. There's ways to fix up little mistakes, and there's ways to turn them into something else. So yeah, if I get an opportunity, which I'm sure I will in this particular scene, I will show you how I do that. But yeah, with the birds, that's a good example. So you should have this kind of nice little blend. And what I'm going to do, one thing I've really forgotten at the moment, is put in that reflection of these mountains and stuff out the back. I'm going to just spray this section down with a bit of water. If you don't have a spray bottle like that, just re-wet that area with a bit of clean water. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to put in a quick little impression of this, this reflection of the headland out in the back. Okay, darker paint. I'm just dropping this in. Okay, kind of around the same color, but like a lighter version of that rock or whatever. Just drop that in, wet in wet, and like this. Okay, goes all the way down to the sand. Basic little reflection. Okay, doesn't have to be much. I think something like that should be okay. Just I want to make sure it's dark enough. Maybe put a bit of green, a touch of green in there as well. Okay, see? And see how it's just wet and wet, soft, so it just blends in with everything? Yeah. All right, so that's it. We are done with the first wash. Thank God. So I'm going to give this a quick dry. But before I do, Let's put in some color for the figures. Now, this is where you can have a bit of fun. You know, everything else is kind of desaturated in terms of color. I'm going to pick up some. I'm going to leave this guy white, the shirt white anyway, but I'm going to put in maybe like a blue shirt for this one, this person here. Put in a bit of cerulean there for the shirt. Okay, bit of cerulean blue. This one to the right, yeah, I don't mind how he looks. One thing I kind of want to do is maybe change it so that they're walking forward. So that's why I've left a bit of the shirt kind of opened up on the front there like that. And I'll leave that shirt the same color. Yeah, this area is still, yeah, this area here in the front is still kind of wet a touch. So we can still go in. But we just want to use some darker values. This person here, what color should I make this person there? Well, we've got blue, so maybe something kind of warmer. I don't know. Yeah, like something warmer. But I do like the light showing through on the shirt. I really like that. So I will maybe just leave a bit of extra color there to the left. Blend that out a touch. That bit of the reflection, just to really bring out that figure a bit more. Yeah, should we use blue again? Oh God, this is where I spend most of my time, just deciding what color to make some of these bits and pieces. I'm overthinking it, Darren. Let's just put in, let's try some purple. I'm gonna put in some maybe lilac-y color. How's that? A bit of lilac color. Okay, I couldn't decide another purple or red, so we're gonna go right in the middle. Okay, a bit of something for the shirt. Okay, like that. Okay, just a bit of basic color. Leave that. Now, another thing I want to do is maybe add in a bit of skin values. So I'm gonna pick up some red and a bit of yellow, mix that together. For darker skin complexions, you can add in some brown or a bit of blue in there as well. It doesn't really matter the exact color that you're using here. I just want to put in maybe the color for the head. Like that. There we go. A little bit of something for the head. Down to the collar of the shirt there. Some of the arms. The legs, maybe these people, but maybe they're wearing shorts. Yeah. Maybe not. We'll go over some of this later, but something like that. You know, this person here, I don't think I'll do anything. Just a bit with the head. Should be fine. Like that. Good. So, what else do we have now? That's pretty much about it. I'm going to give this a little dry with the hair dryer and stick around because I'm going to show you some really cool bits and pieces to bring out the figures, to maybe bring out some boats and small details out the back as well, these finishing touches. All right, so the page is now completely dry. Let me know how you're going, everyone, because this is an important part of the painting where we just bring out those final finishing touches. Okay. Now, if you have a tiny bit of white gouache, you can use this for some highlights. But the main thing I reckon you should do is put in some of the details of the figures. So maybe some of the legs, detail out the legs a bit. Just trying to squeeze out a bit of this gouache. It's completely really dry the tube. Okay, so the legs, we can almost leave them as they are, I guess. But I want to just darken a bit of them, some of the legs a bit, so that they stand out a touch like this. And maybe put in a shadow, quick little shadow underneath them, like this, maybe. Very basic little shadow underneath the legs. Okay, like that. Almost like the light's coming from, light coming from the right hand side, perhaps. Yeah, let's do it to the a little bit of shadow to the right, like this, for these two figures. It's changed. I mean, from the reference photo, really, they're standing in the water, so you know the reflection's actually moving downwards. But I'm trying to just change that light source a little bit so that it's over to the right hand side, just to create a bit more feeling of light in this scene. And here we have this figure here in the front as well. I'm just going to try to change the legs, just try to add a bit of darkness to the legs of this figure too. Okay, there we have it. Something, maybe an arm out the back. Sometimes you get, people they're wearing like a bag or something. Let's draw in a little, bag. Maybe person's carrying a bag. Let's put in a touch of hair for some of these figures. Okay, a little bit of hair like that. Little tiny things like this, you just add in, and you can really make it look more interesting. And if you have a bit of gouache, this is what I like to do, is essentially just pick up a bit of gouache, which is opaque watercolor, and here I can just sort of start bringing out some of these waves that we'd lost before. So, for example, here, I can just drop in a bit of white gouache. If you've got titanium white, some people even have acrylic, and it works with acrylic as well. Okay, and it only works as well once the paper's dried. So you really want to make sure the paper is completely dried, and just feather in a few of these tiny little brush strokes for the, I guess, the water, I suppose, these little waves, tiny little things, okay, that you might have lost out before. So basic, but it adds an extra layer of detail. Okay, it's not completely necessary, but I find that I often do it right at the end. A little bit here, maybe. Right. That. Okay. You have to make sure that gouache is very, very light in color, that you don't have any other color mixed in. I've accidentally mixed in a touch of blue, so it just looks a bit funny, but no worries. And these little boats out the back, I'll just sort of put in a sail like this, a mast, so it sort of sticks out the back, very subtle, but almost looks like there's a boat there. Yeah, almost looks like there's a boat there. Sometimes what I find to help outline the location of the boats, I might pick up a bit of darker paint and just add in a touch of darkness at the bottom of the boats, like this, so that it just kind of grounds them. Oh, not ground them, but places them on the water. Okay, a little bit of something like that. Bring them out. So now it looks like there's kind of some boats there. Let's put in some seagulls, some birds. I mean, it can't be a beach scene without some birds. Some people don't like these birds that I paint in. You might like it how it's turned out at the moment. You don't have to add them in. Now, because I've made some little mistakes here, like I was saying, I've splattered the paint all over before and created a mess. We can turn some of these little blobs into birds, like that. Look at that. Just a couple of these almost dots and V-shaped wings here in the background, using a very small synthetic brush to do this. And this allows me to get in these tiny little details of these birds, okay, off in the background, and cover up these little mistakes that I made before with that splattering technique, okay. And it just adds a tiny bit of detail. So that's pretty much it. Now, guys, hang around right to the end, because I've got a special little offer that I wanted to talk about. It's a program that I'm running, but let me know how you went down below in the chats. I'm going to take off the tape, and let's see what it looks like. But I'd love to hear, yes, I would love to hear how you went today, and any sort of feedback that you have for me as well. Okay. But you should have something that looks like this. And it didn't take all too long to paint. In fact, I probably took a bit longer than usual. But you've learned a lot of different techniques here today. And I'm going to switch over to my other screen now because I want to talk about a program that I'm running. So it is a 70 course program. And give me one moment. I'm just going to flick over to this other screen here. Okay, so here it is. So this is a program basically that a lot of my students are currently enrolled in, and yeah, today I'm really want to announce a little offer for those of you who haven't watched my workshops before, especially if you've got some value out of today's session. It's really just the tip of the iceberg. So a lot of the time, guys, I find this anyway, these are a few things I struggled with when I started out painting, all some of the technical difficulties, and you might be able to relate to some of these, feeling frustrated because, you can picture a painting in your head, you get that reference photo, you've got an idea of, and you say to yourself, hey, I'm gonna paint this beautiful beach scene, but then when you get to the end, it doesn't look anything like it, so frustrating. I didn't also understand the process of painting, and that's something that beginners also struggle with a lot as well. Kind of like what we talked about today, where we paint the light, even the drawing part of the workshop, understanding where to put the horizon line. If you don't understand the process of painting, it's going to be very difficult to end up achieving that result at the end. Another thing I struggled with, and a lot of my students do as well, is understanding how to mix and layer paint. Okay. And a big complaint is ending up with a big messy puddle at the end when you just paint and you end up with everything blending together, looks like nothing, and you're less likely to want to start. Here's a couple of paintings I thought I'd show you. Really embarrassing. This is a painting I did back in 2013, I think, about 2013, 2014. I didn't know what I was doing. I had some idea of wet and dry, but a lot of this I was just winging it. And shapes, even drawing shapes as well. I was really struggling to simplify shapes in watercolor. Touched a little bit about simplifying shapes today, but not in a huge amount of detail. And that's another skill that you really need to learn, that a lot of courses and a lot of videos don't talk about, because the drawing is so important, and learning how to take apart a complex reference picture and draw the simple shapes in it is something that's so important, because you can't end up with a loose painting without that. And you want to spend all day drawing as well. Here's one that I painted recently, and I say recently, probably about a year and a half ago. And you can see here, much better understanding of shapes. This is a market scene. You can see these bits of bread and oranges, triangular shapes for the umbrellas and buildings. So I had a better idea there. And I painted this in half the time that it took to paint that. And here are a few things you might also, a bunch of things you might also be able to relate, and you might be feeling sort of tired of these sort of thoughts as well. When you get bogged down, like I said before, getting bogged down in those details and struggling to loosen up your style. That's something that beginners, they dab away, they pick up a small little brush and they dab away at something, and it just looks kind of almost like childish, like I've seen here with my painting up the top. Believe it or not, that's what I painted back in 2014. I was trying to paint these people in, and I struggled to understand how to loosen up my style, but also achieve that level of realism, a sense of, it's still related to the reference photo, getting too bogged down in the leaves and everything like that, instead of focusing on the big picture. Something I painted more recently, again about 1.5 years ago, okay? Very quickly, I think I did this in about an hour and a bit, but you can see there's all these little details in there that look like it takes a lot of work, but in reality, if you understand the process, it really doesn't take that long at all to apply. A lot of you might also be seeing the same results, losing patience, or worse, losing confidence in painting. And I think that's one of the big big things that I feel so sad about when I see beginners that just give up because they don't see a painting through to the end, or they're not following the right process, and they end up painting something that, using techniques that are unsuitable at the wrong time, and they just think that they just don't have any artistic talent. I used to question that as well. I'd paint and I think I can't do it. I see all these other painters, they're picking things up so quickly. They make it look so easy. Maybe I just don't have the skills. But as you can see, I'm basically where you were. A lot of you guys, if you're starting out just painting, that's where I was, 2014. A lot of people starting out could probably paint better than me. But a lot of these techniques and processes just started clicking for me a few years ago. So once that happened, pretty much everything I paint has a level of quality that I'm satisfied with. And that's the last thing I want for anyone to feel. To stop painting because you just feel you don't have any talent. Because a lot of artists, they're not born with that talent. Some are, but the majority of them are not. Okay? And you might have those dreams of being able to produce beautiful paintings you can be proud of. Maybe sell them at a fair, show your friends and family. Maybe you want to teach painting someday. All that is possible for you. Now, I want you to imagine that you could understand those essential steps you need to create a beautiful painting. Loosen up, drastically improve your paintings, understand that process, and more importantly, accept to learn and work with your mistakes. Kind of like what I was talking about today, where I'd made a mistake by splattering paint into the sky. For some people, they'll just, and I was guilty of this myself. I was a big perfectionist. I'd tear up the paper and I'd say I've stuffed it, lose motivation to paint. But you have to learn the process of accepting when things go wrong, working with it, or seeing it through to the end. Even if you've stuffed it, seeing it through to the end and learning from that mistake so that you don't, or are less likely to repeat it again. Okay? Talk about that a lot as well in this program. Fourth thing I see a lot is, people, like I said, understanding color mixing and applying watercolor techniques. So that's something that, if you end up signing up for my course today, my watercolor program, I talk about this in every single video. How I mix the colors, what proportion of color I'm mixing, whether I'm using a 10% mix of paint to 90% mix of water or a 30% mix of paint. I talk about why I'm doing that as well. And that's that level of detail and specificity, I think, is lacking in a lot of courses, watercolor courses out there. A lot of instructors just assume that you know how to mix the colors by yourself and the proportions. And so I really like to explain things, as I've done today, as I'm painting and what I'm doing at the time, so that you can get into my head. And imagine feeling as well that you're confident, totally immersed in the time every time that you paint. That's something that if you can achieve that level, that mental state, painting is going to be fun for you. Practice, and that's why we get into painting in the first place. I think a lot of people forget that. You see children especially, you give them some colored pencils, some paints to play with. They don't care about what they end up in the end. And somehow as we end up as adults, we always become more goal-oriented. And we focus on the end result. We can become too stressed in the process. And we forget to enjoy ourselves in the moment and understand what we're doing in the moment. Really focus on that particular time that we're painting. It's almost like a type of therapy in a way of, because I often when I paint, I'm just block out everything else, and that's all that's on my mind. Imagine if you could feel excited to start a painting because you know the steps and the techniques to get to the finish line, and proud to show your friends and family the beautiful paintings you create each week. And obviously connected to creative side, that's something I think a lot of people struggle with these days. We get into jobs, we get into work, we get too tired after work, we think, I don't want to paint, also because you've got that roadblock of feeling, maybe I'm not good enough to paint, or maybe it's too difficult. I don't know where to start. Okay, so one of the greatest gifts I think I've been given is just the ability to sort of stick through something, and if you're able to do that and connect back to that creative side of yourself, it's something that I think a lot of us struggle to find in daily life. It's most rewarding. So here are a few other things I cover in my Watercolor Essentials program, and the link is in the description, by the way, to it. Okay, you can here a few other things I've talked about as well, but you learn to paint with confidence. You're going to understand perspective in drawing, which is something that a lot of people don't talk about as well in workshops. So I think it's just assumed that people know how to draw, but perspective, like I talked about today, putting the horizon line, putting the figures' heads in a particular area, making them smaller or larger, that's super important as well, because you don't want to end up with a giant looking person in your painting. Things that just look out of place. Timing, knowing when to do things is so important as well. So like I said today, we're using wet and wet techniques to paint in some softer sections like clouds, or we're using wet and dry when we're painting in sharper shapes in the backgrounds. If you try to paint in that big shape of that that headland while the paint was still wet in the back, you're going to end up with a big mess. So timing is timing, and it's just so crucial, knowing when to do things. Brush techniques and water control. Talk a bit more about that in this 70 course program as well. Water control. Knowing a bit of dry brush, knowing how much water to use on the brush. Tones and values. This is the secret component. And I touched on this basically today, and how I touched on it was basically when I was talking about painting lighter or darker. Very important, because when you start out, a lot of paintings just look very dull and they look one-dimensional. When to create depth, you need a combination of light and darker objects in there, and I talk about that a lot. I'm obsessed with this, even more than values or even techniques. Layering, and as you saw today, we painted basically in 2 layers. Okay, that's all you need almost for basically any painting. Maybe with a little touch-up, a couple of little touch-ups at the end. Choosing colors, making those choosing colors easy. I use a very limited palette. 3 colors will do it for you. And I also talk about vision a lot. So what you want to end up, whether you want to change the composition of a painting, often you never can get a perfect reference photo, or if you're painting outside, you're never going to get that perfect scene in front of you. So often you're going to have to change, the sky. You want to add some clouds. You want to change the light source like I did today. So having a vision or a plan in the beginning is so important in terms of what you want to imply and achieve in your scene. Okay, so this is what's included in my program. It's a 70 course program, like I said before. There's landscapes, streetscapes, line and wash, portraits, flowers, other subjects, especially I've even made sub-courses in there that cover tones and values, which I was saying was such an important one before. Unlimited instant access as well. So you can go back, play back all the videos as much as you want. Okay, you get hundreds of hours of paint-along demonstrations, as well as 100+ replays of previous live workshops like this one here. And all the reference photos, tracing templates if you want to trace. Okay, you get to learn at your own pace, which is important. You can slow the video down, increase the speed as well. And this is important because sometimes I paint a little bit faster, or maybe I don't, explain things a little bit fast. So you can go back, rewatch it again. Okay, it's all step-by-step narrated in real time. This is a line of wash scene that's included in this program. And here are a few more paintings that are also included in this program. These are some of the live workshops, previous live workshops that you get access to. Very loose sort of style, as you can see. It's a Melbourne scene. Some of these are recent scenes that I've done. This is a scene of, I think it's Paris. Another beach scene. There we go. You better be happy with this one. From the other day, a few more. I think some of these I showed you. These are all included, and you can paint along with me, create similar looking scenes. Okay, more here, and drop a question in the comments if you have questions about this program. There's also, as you can see here, portraits, and a lot of people like my portraitures, but I don't really do them all that often these days. I want to get back into it again, because when I get back into it, it's great fun. But I do talk about portraiture, and I have a bunch of portraiture courses that are included, okay, including these 3 live workshops that you can follow along and paint to as well. But for the most part, as you can see, compared to that, I've got a more loose sort of style. This is more kind of realistic style for portraits, okay? Sunflowers, what else? Another beach scene. A lot of these, they don't take more than an hour for you to complete as well. Right, there's some more, again, loose sort of street scenes. These are some line and wash scenes, so I'm using black pen and watercolor for these particular ones. Look at these ones. Some of these took like half an hour to paint. Okay, so these are just a taster of what's included. There's so much more content in there, And there's something in there for everyone. It's a huge course, a huge program with tons of sub-courses, what I meant to say. So more little line and wash scenes here, urban landscapes, more simple ones, night scenes. It just goes on and on. More portraiture stuff as well, loose kind of portraits. Okay, now some of you may be new, so you don't really know who I am. These are some of my ratings. I teach on multiple platforms. The one that I've linked below in the description and the comments is my own personal platform. It allows me to connect personally with students and give you a bit more one-on-one attention, and is pretty much the best value because it includes all the best, most popular courses that I have out there. Okay, so on Facebook, I've been an instructor there for a while. I've got a 5 out of 5 star Facebook instructor rating. This was a while back, but it's gone up now. I think I've got about over 150 ratings or something like that now. 4.51 out of 5 star instructor ratings on other platforms as well. It's another teaching platform, and I've got lots of students that enroll each month. This is my own personal platform, which I offer the most value out of because you get pretty much all, like I said, all the best courses that I have. And I'll also tell you about a few bonuses you get as well with if you purchase this one. That's included, this one here, some student testimonials. Yeah, that's a review of a sub-course on watercolor essentials from Lisa, one of my viewers on YouTube as well. Philip, that's one of his testimonials as well. And you know, my biggest aim here is just to offer as much value as possible with this program. Some more student testimonials, just a bit of a copy paste job. Okay, now if you sign up today, there are a few bonuses that you're going to get. The first bonus is that you're going to get tailored feedback. So 2 months from the date of registration, so if you sign up today, you can get tailored feedback for your projects that you submit. Okay, so you have access to my Facebook. You can message me there. You can email me, send me your paintings, and as part of the program, and I can give you some tailored feedback. This is so important because this is going to help you to save time and improve faster. I'm going to pick up on mistakes. I'm going to pick up on areas for you to focus on, and I'm going to give you a bit more guided direction. Okay, and you're going to be able to get in my head, sort of think like an experienced watercolorist. And it's kind of like anything. I mean, if you learn tennis, you're going to have a coach with you that's going to give you a little bit of feedback on your swing, or they could just pick up on things that are obvious to them but not obvious to you, but can save a lot of time. Maybe using the wrong brush, maybe you're mixing too much of a certain paint. So this is a lot of value. You also get access to a private watercolor community as well as our public community with thousands of students in there. Okay, the public community. The private community has less students, okay, but that allows you to get priority access, okay, to questions. You can message me directly in there as well. More importantly, with these communities, especially our public communities, you get to find inspiration and motivation to paint. That is the biggest thing. Everything that I talk about today, if you can't have a community that helps to inspire you, especially today, look, we have all these people that we're painting along, doing things together. You know, you feel motivated to actually continue painting. And the third bonus, like I mentioned before, you get access to 100 plus previous workshops. So this is on top of the 70 sub courses that you get included as part of this program. The 70 sub courses are about nearly 1,000 videos in addition to these 100 ones. So there's a lot of content in there, tons of value. But yeah, the third bonus, go back to the point, 100 previous workshops, and you get 1 to 2 different paintings per workshops that I go through. Sort of similar to the one that I did today, okay? But in addition, you also get exclusive links to the larger reference photos. And they're all royalty-free reference photos, so you can paint them, sell the paintings, do whatever you want with them. I don't mind. And also the tracing stencils that I've created, so you don't have to draw, you can just trace them as well. Because drawing's not for everyone. So how much does it cost? Now, normally I sell it for $497. Like I said, there's so much value in there, but I'm selling it today for $297. Okay, keep in mind you get 70 full courses in there, about 1,000 different videos, 100 plus workshop replays as well. Okay, it's going to keep you busy for a long time. You also have access to all the future workshops, future live workshops that I run. I run these every month, at least one a month. In the last couple of months, I've gone a bit mad actually, and I've run like 20 to 30 of them actually, which is unusual. But you get access to all of those as well, plus the references, all the stencils. That's going to keep you going. So it's ongoing value that you get with this program. Private group access, like I said before, 2 months student support to get some feedback from myself, especially in the beginning if you're just starting out. It's really going to help you. Okay, so once off payment. And if you're interested, just type enroll down below in the chats. If you want some more information as well, type enroll down in the chats. I'll send you some more information. There's even I've got another page that will give you a bit of a taster as well. But yeah, type enroll in the chats or click the pinned link. You can sign up. Okay, this price is only going to be. I'm only going to keep this up for today. Probably maybe tomorrow. I'll keep it up tomorrow as well. So if you really want to get the most amount of value, do make sure you sign up. Sign up now. I don't do this very often. Basically, after these couple of days, I'm going to bring the price back up to $497. But yeah, like I said, you get so much value in here, and once you understand my process of how I paint, it's really going to change things for you. It's really going to be a big game changer, because practice without proper direction often is going to, just going to leave you spinning your wheels and ending up frustrated. So really important to follow along with someone who understands something. And you end up going to watercolor classes anyway. And I used to do watercolor workshops. I still do some. I'm planning a live one, in-person one here in Melbourne, and they often cost about $100 anyway. Okay, so nearly $300, $297, and I mean you get pretty much access to a huge amount of content. So at some point I'm going to split up this course into smaller portions, but for the meanwhile I'm still offering it for anyone who some early birds who do sign up. But here is the link as well. Again, it's in the description. Go ahead and check it out. Okay, and I'm going to flip back to my main screen now. Okay, here we go. And I will actually just show you a little bit of what the course includes. When you get into the program, this is what it looks like. Okay, so you have access to the groups. Okay, you have to request access to the private group. Got my email address there. You can email me. But check this out. Down the left-hand side of the page, you've got all these different courses, sub-courses you can access. I've got loose watercolor painting essentials. I've got how to paint boats. I've got particular courses on painting birds here as well. How to paint night landscapes, how to paint street scenes. And all you do is you just basically go into a scene. Okay, maybe I'll just click into that one. The computer's running a bit slow today because I'm streaming at the same time, so often my internet's a little bit throttled, but it will load a lot faster for you. You go in there, and basically, as you can see here, follow along and paint. Paint with me. Has access to all of the course materials, stencils, everything like that. Let's go. Is there like a portraiture one somewhere? I've probably got a portraiture. I do have portraiture ones in here for sure, because I've just got to find where they are. But there's just so much. There's just so much included in here. Here we go, portraiture. Down the bottom, faces and portraits. What's this one here? Different female portraits. And one of my students, Anne, she always says I don't paint women. I'd certainly do in these portrait classes. Most of them are women. What else do we have? Yeah, all kinds of different. The things that actually one of my most popular workshops is these line and wash workshops, where I use pen to draw, and then I go over the top with watercolor. So let me show you like a quick little thing. But as you can see, it's just a huge amount of content in here. Okay, there's one there. down to the end. Okay, hundreds of hours of content. So, guys, if you're interested, make sure you sign up below. Take that opportunity. Like I said, it's for today. It's $297. Sign up below, and yeah, if you've got questions, I do see there's a bunch of you still watching along. There's about 50, maybe nearly 50 people still watching. You've made it right to the end, which means that you guys are very dedicated. And Sharon's also, yeah, okay, Sharon, I've just sent you the link if you're interested. It looks like you're interested, so sign up. And you know, one of the big things as well, that public group, guys, if you've painted along today and you've enjoyed the session, check out the group. It's Watercolor Mentor, sorry, facebook.com/groups/Watercolor Mentor. And I'll just link this down in the comments as well. Upload what you've painted today, and you can tag me and ask me for a little bit of advice as well. Okay, I'll try to get to it. As long as you tag me. Sometimes there's so many posts in there that I get lost in there. But anyhow, I'm just going to read through some comments, and surely there's a few questions as well for you guys as well. Margaret says, I love your tutorials. Thank you, Margaret. And Terry as well says, Darren, hi Darren, it's Terry from Minnesota, US. You were the first teacher I took a class from when I started in 2021. You were so affirming and helpful with a wonderful level of detail I needed. You made me want to keep trying, and I'm still here. Thank you for all that you do. Thank you. Thanks, Terry. And, you know, everything that I do today, all these workshops, are only possible because you guys are here supporting me. And, you know, when I actually started teaching in the beginning, a few years back, I was absolutely, like, terrified of being on camera. Completely felt like a fish out of water, stumbling through my words. Still do that sometimes when I'm a bit nervous. But, you know, that really helps me, gives me motivation to continue doing what I'm doing. And I run a few of these online communities. The biggest one, the watercolor community, is over 230,000 people now. And, you know, a lot of that was because I have that aim in the beginning, to provide, you know, these workshops to people. And now I'm able to make part of my living from it, which is, I mean, it's a miracle for me. It's the greatest thing to be able to do something that you love. And I really hope that some of you who have maybe those ambitions in the future end up that way as well. And it all starts from the beginning, from just improving your skills, your watercolor skills, to the point where you feel confident enough to potentially sell your work or to teach one day. So, but again, a lot of the time, painting, you know, for me, it's like, you know, it's a way to wind down. You know, hard these days, but you know, because I'm teaching a lot of the time. But for a lot of people, it's a way to connect back to that creative side of yourself and relax. So if you've achieved that, you know, made it to the end of this workshop, you've done super well. Because I tell you what, a lot of people would have given up halfway, or wouldn't have even started. I do find a lot of people say they'll come to these workshops and they don't, because, and I ask them why not. Sometimes they just feel too intimidated to get started, or they put it off. So you've done so well to make it through all the way, all of you. And Inga says, thank you so much for your time and talent, Darren. Greatly appreciated. I've shared your info with family and friends. Thanks so much. And yeah, appreciate it. If you like the video today, click the like button on the video and share it with a friend. Share it with watercolor groups that you're part of. And yeah, share it around, because that really helps me to get my content out to more people, reach more people, and share the magic of watercolors. You know, a lot of people, probably the most rewarding feedback I've had is people who have maybe felt a bit down in their lives, or they've had just some, you know, rough time, some bad stuff happen to them, and painting has helped them to get back onto their feet and get over some of those challenges. It certainly helped me get over some of those challenges. I had a rough time back in 2015, and I was alone for a lot of that year, 14, 24, yeah, right around about that time. I was in a really bad space, and had a death in the family. You know, had a breakup. You know, it was a very dark time in my life, and I pulled out the paints, and that really kept my mind active, kept me busy, kept me working towards something, and kept me sane. So anyway, Leslie says, I love that you share your skills, so generous with your time. For this tutorial / course, my feedback would be that I missed the we are painting this section wet and went till halfway through the... Yes, okay. So I'll should probably be more straight up next time about direct about, we're using this particular technique and halfway through. But thank you for the feedback, Leslie. Josie says, thank you so much. I wish I could add my kind of painting right down here. Maybe I could figure out how to do that. Yeah, Josie, if you go to the link that I'm going to send you a link to the watercolor group that I've started. So the watercolor group, well, it's facebook.com/group/watercolor mentor. Check out that group and you can actually post your painting in there. Okay. And who else do we have? Thanks, Louisa. And what location was today's photo from? I'm actually unsure. I'm really not sure where today's this is. I got it from a free reference photo website. So if you paint it and share it, sell it, whatever, that's fine with me. But yeah, I'm not sure exactly where it's from. Nera just saying, I'm not blaming my tools, but today the paper seemed to not work with the water in the sky. Some bits of the paper just aren't happy. Yeah, sometimes you might get some dodgy sizing. Narrator, and parts of the paper will dry faster than other parts. So yeah, what kind of paper are you using? Okay, just going through, check out some more comments. So just leaving you guys another few minutes really to ask some questions about my 70 course program, or even just questions to me. Any questions about preferably art, but if you've got personal questions, if you want to know a bit about me as well, drop them down in the comments. I'm meaning to run some lives, some kind of ask me anything questions as well, because some of you want to know and want to get a bit sort of personal, a bit close and personal with me. So I tend to just get down to business with these workshops. But I think for some of you, understanding my journey as well has been helpful, because it's not been a straightforward journey for me. I've gone on and off watercolors. I started when I was younger, like, maybe 16, 17 or something like that. Stopped, got back into it. But since I've nailed this process of painting, like this 2-3 step process, like I've been talking about today, where you paint the lights, the darks, got my drawing under control. My painting has been very consistent over the last few years. I've painted pretty much every single month, if not every week. Pamela, one of my students, says, have to go, see you next week. And Pamela's enrolled in this 70 course program as well. So maybe you could drop a little bit of a comment about that. But if not, Pamela, thank you for coming along today. And great to see you every single workshop. You're just here every single time, and you've improved so much. So I'll catch you next time if you hear this message. Just going through and having a look through any other comments. Yeah, guys, if you're watching along afterwards as well, leave a comment, and I will get back to you. And yeah, I think that's pretty much it. But thank you all for coming along today. And yeah, I do see there's still about 30 plus of you here. And if you're not sure about whether you want to enroll in this program, let me know, and I will send you through some more information. We can just chat as well, because obviously, it's probably something that you don't enroll in every day. But I'll also send you the link down below to a page of my course that you can just see what's included, a bit more of a general overview of the course before you purchase as well. You can have a look at this link here down below in the comments. Okay, so it's right there, and you click that, have a bit of a read. It just goes through what I talked about today, even a little bit of a taster video in there so that you can see what's included. Okay, but yeah, Louisa says, I'm just starting with landscapes. This is only my second workshop with you. I think at this point I should try more of your videos on YouTube. Yes. You know, if it's the second one, definitely. I find that obviously that the more practice, the better. But also, if you practice along with me, you start to think like me in terms of how I'm planning my paintings, in terms of how I'm using the different steps of painting, how I'm painting certain things with wet and wet, wet and dry. And eventually you get into my head, and it becomes a lot easier for you. You internalize that process. But watercolors is a difficult medium to learn, and it's not something that you can just pick up in a few goes. So yeah, definitely come along to the next ones, Louisa. You've done super well. If you can make it till the end, if you've made it till the end of this workshop, that's most of the journey. That's most of the journey done. You just got to keep on coming along, and often we're our own worst critics. You look at your painting and then you think it doesn't look so good, but then you look at a painting you've done 3 months ago and you're like, okay, well, I see. I think I've gotten better. So we're often really bad judges of our own progress. It's kind of like when you see a kid grow up or something like that. You see them every day, and so you don't really get to see their growth. But someone else from an external perspective, can really see that you've grown, 20 centimeters or whatever. Michelle says, "Will your course teach us how to paint outside in plain air?" So most of the videos in that course, Michelle, are from a reference photo. So a lot of those reference photos I've taken myself, and also a lot of them the remainder of them are royalty free. So the same process that you'd use painting from a reference photo, you'd use plein air. But with plein air, there's the added complexity of the environment. The wind's blowing. You're painting usually from a limited palette, limited materials. Okay, but I can tell you just basically some quick tips on how to paint plein air now. So normally I have a sketchbook, Michelle, and the sketchbook just allows me to paint directly into it. Let me show you what I mean. Okay, here's one. Let me just say I've got some embarrassing paintings in there, but here's some, for example. Okay, allows me to paint directly in here. I've got a palette there on the side that I hold in one hand. I put this on the ground, or maybe I sitting on a ledge or like a bench or something like that, and I've got this on my lap. Put the paints on the bench, and you can get in a nice little sketch like this. Now, if you want to paint something in plein air that's more accomplished, you are going to need an easel. And if you search online for watercolor painting easel or a tripod, what would you call it? It's like those camera tripods. If you get a camera tripod and then you attach like a board to that, that's all we need. That's all we need. And then you can clip your paints to the side, hold your water in your hand, put your brushes on. You don't need a gigantic sort of easel like you see oil painters, lugging around this gigantic backpack. That's something that really turned me off painting in oils. I can paint in oils, and I love painting in oils, but the mess of it made me kind of give that up. When I was younger, I swapped over to watercolors, and I'm a very impatient person. You might think that I'm naturally a patient person, but I've had to train myself to be that way. And watercolors is that perfect medium that you can sit down, finish a painting in one go. Once you know the stages, and you get that almost instant gratification of something that turns up. So all painting, often you sit there laboring over details, and you can see some of my portraits, like I shared before, very detailed portraits, and they kind of stress me out sometimes. So I've gone from kind of, I have technically better skills, but I've gone to a point where I just want to imply the essence of a scene, the feeling of a scene, and I'm happy with that. Pamela says you can plein air if you take out a sketchbook, fountain pen. Yeah, that's a good tip, Pamela. Fountain pen, even one of them water brushes. Sometimes you get those brushes with the water reservoir in there. They're like a godsend. They just, not the ideal to paint with, but for sketches you're fine. Yeah, no problem, Michelle. You're very, very welcome. Guys, any other questions? I'm going to give you another minute or so before I end this session. yeah, again, do me a favor, click the like button on the video, share this with a friend, share it in a watercolor group as well. It doesn't cost you a cent and does really help me to get this out to more people. And follow me on YouTube, follow me on Facebook as well, because I do more of these workshops and I send out tons of free tutorials as well that are going to benefit you, even if you don't sign up today. There's a lot of free content that I make that will change the game for you in terms of painting in watercolors. Okay, so I think that's about it. I don't really see anyone else chatting. I think I'm now talking to myself. But thank you all for coming along today. I really appreciate your time. Hope you got a lot out of this session. If you have questions you're watching on later, let me know, and I'll get back. Get back to you later. But for now, I will end it and see you all next time.